Hello class, my name is Rafael. I am going to talk about the new technical brief. This name is the evaluation of the glass fiber reinforcer polymers GFRP in shear reinforcers for beams. This project is with emphasis of the topics of the advanced designs in concrete course of the Dr. Risey. The purpose with this work is evaluate the shear behavior inside the fiberglass reinforcer beam and the traditional beams with steel in order to define stress difference and to able to concrete if it is possible to use this type of the longitudinal bars made with the GFRP inside to the structural elements. In the images, you can see it in the first part, a one traditional column and traditional beam with the use of the steel. And the second part, you can review, you can see what is the difference with this use with the bars of the GFRP. This is a study. This is a one comparison with the traditional material and the new materials, alternative materials. And this is the idea. Evaluate if it's possible to use this type of the longitudinal bars into the construction.
Next, to talk about these topics, and the principal topic is explain what is the grass fiber reinforcer. And the second topic is explain what is the relevance of the grass fiber reinforcer polymers. In this occasion is the inclusion of the polymers in these castings or in these elements. And third is the use of the GFP reinforcer. Continues with the evaluation, the development, and the shape behaviors of these reinforcers and beams and explain what is the additional in application of the GFP reinforcement. Finally, in the last part, I'm going to explain the exercise according to the methodology of the course, what is the principal or more relevant conclusion about this topic, and finally the reference. Okay, and continue with the slides. I'm going to explain what is the grass fiber reinforcement. Though this excellent properties, GFRP has become a common material at the high proliferation into the construction and the different research and the different investigations during the last 15 years working with this material. The principal properties of the GFRP is a one high comprehensive, high tensile, light dense, more ductility, fire resistance, and in sometimes is used on the acoustic materials. And the applications on the construction. I can find this material in the case, interiors, covers, beam, and structures. Continuous in this images you can say what is the principal use of this material. The principal use on the construction is in the facades. Continue with the structural elements. For this research, the idea is to explain what is the benefit or the advantage for the use the GFP materials into the construction.
Examples of the use is some different projects around the world. In this opportunity, I'm going to explain the projects in Bogota City with the use of the GFRP. In the first case is a one building, the name is a city in the downtown of Bogota. This is very traditional because it was the first construction in Bogota with incorporation of this material in the face gates. And the second project is in the PUEs, it's a one university, also in Bogota, with incorporation of the interiors, on the walls, on the structures with the GFPR. Finally, according to the research in the project of the Recreation Center, it's possible to identify the use of the USPC as an element structural with incorporation in the last part of the grains reinforcement materials. In this opportunity as a steel in the elements as a beam.
Grass fiber reinforced polymer, also GFRP, consists of long-strain grass fibers with a polymer matrix that brings the fibers together, according to the research of the Carl and Poland 2019. The principal advantage of the use of these fibers is the use without corrosive into the structures, non-magnetic, non-conductive, and anisotropic behavior. In the different images, you can show the difference between the composite in the GLRP and the application into the concrete as a members of the bars, and the principal problem with the use of the steel with the corrosion. Another alternative is the change, the traditional process in the construction, with the innovation in the process, with the use of the new alternative materials, with more economic more resistance, according to the modulus of John. In the next slides, I'm going to explain what is the principal advantage for the use of these fibers, and it's possible to have structures with less weight. Another advantage is the use of these bars of the grass fiber reinforcing polymers is with the mode of the elasticity, where in the same research of the Carnot Poland 2019, in the development of the curvature of the deformation was possible review principal characteristics with more elasticity of the steel material.
According to the biography and the different research, it's possible to find guidelines have led to the successful application of the GFRP reinforcement in bridges, decks, slabs, barriers walls, parking, garage, and continuous pavements. In this opportunity, the idea is review what is the longitudinal behavior on find the difference with the traditional use as a steel in beams and the traditional as a traditional element and compare it what is the principal advantage with the use of the GFRP. According to this research, it's possible to find many structural behaviors and many characteristics and the compression and the tensile in the disc beers in application of the longitudinal reinforcement and the shear reinforcement and the interaction between shears and longitudinal bars. For the use of this GFRP is possible introduced into the beams as an element structural in the same positions of the steel and review what is the new behavior. According to the district views, it's possible to find the difference into the two materials. In the first graphic, the behavior of the shear forces is very similar to the GFPR materials and the steel. For example, the S is a GFP material and the EC is a the steel materials. With the view of the force deflection, the behavior is very similar to the mean span of the mean shear span. For another hand, in the second figure, it's possible to review the same behavior and the longitudinal reinforcement into the concrete, where was possible to show the the similar correlation between the fibers bars and the steel bars. Continuing the same slide, it's possible to review at the principal advantage with the research according to this topic. Briefly review the literature and resources in this topic. Find the decreased strain due to binding of the GFRP members and the similar mechanic behavior to the steel and reinforcement in confined elements, a decreased reinforcement in the space and the result on the graded shear strain. It's so important the similar behavior and structural behavior and the similar resistance in the use of the steel and the GFP. And finally, the another characteristic is the integration with the eco materials because the machine of the fibers is more expensive or is more easy than the steel. And this is a one alternative which costs more eco-friendly and friendly into the construction. And finally, according to this graphics, it's possible to have a conclusion. The behaviors on the fiber is linear, very similar to the steel. Continues with the theoretical information and review the papers on the many journals about the research in this topic. Continually, I'm going to present the difference between two curvatures. In this case, according to the tensile and the flexural curves. Was very interesting in this research in the 2019 the similar behaviors in the discourse in the first case of the steel of the red color and the GFRP on the blue color. It's possible to find the tensile and the curvatures with very similar behaviors introduced in beams. For another considerations, in the second graphic and the flexural curvatures, it's possible to identify as a steel as a blue line and the use of the GFPR in the different compositions in the red line, blue and green line. The use of the green line this safely for the construction because it's a good behavior around the sections. In this case, the fibers contribute with the one flexural capacity into these elements. In this exercise, I'm going to explain the behavior of the GFRP spirals in members of the circular cross sections. This is so important for the use and the pillars and the columns. It's another applications that is under development. As a previous studies, I was noted that the GFRP reinforcement behaved as similar to the top of the steel reinforcement. This is so important because it's possible to use the GFRP in for the same use in the pillars and the columns and the regular use in steel. In addition, it was observed that the difference of the shear strength between the GFRP and steel reinforced members with the same amount of the spiral and the longitudinal reinforced radius. This is as significant and indicates that the same volumes of the G-theory spirals can be used in the steel spirals in the members with a circular cross-section. In 2016, was determined this use and the equations and the methods for the use of the GFRP in the constructional industry, and there was developed an experimental factor at the 1.17 in the shear elements. Therefore, it was concluded that the design methods for a regular sections could be used GFRP reinforced circular sections in modifications as are implemented. For this reason, was developed these equations, and the one mix between the ACE and the traditional concrete and the use with the circular section in the GFRP reinforced circular sections. Another important study was at the research of the Mohammed et and here research the capacity in the chair in these elements. In this opportunity, you use the simulation for show how can change the behavior structural in these elements and was very important because he discovered a new alternatives of the deformations of the 3D element modeling very similar to the concrete to the traditional concrete. As a suggestion, the STM models was used on the GFRC reinforcement members with the averages of the ratio on the experimental projects, and the capacity in this opportunity was 0.61. This is very similar at the use of the example on the chapter 12 in the course because it's possible use of the STM models for review the behavior of the structural members. In this opportunity, at the conclusion for this research, for the GFRP reinforcers deep beams, various design specifications could require a GPR reinforcement might be adjusted at the use and design weight, as a steel reinforcement despite that the need for specification design criteria to are currently forecasting behavior. Another application of the GFRP shear reinforcement has been developed in the use of the driving precast concrete piles reinforced with the GFRP bars and spirals. Was wonderfully used because it's possible incorporate in the industry the use of the GFRP in these elements and the structural behavior is good. The study of the Bancroft in 2020 noted that the laboratory tested of the GFRP reinforcer piles behavior and similar meaning to the traditional steel reinforcement members, and the traditional pile installation methods were successful used for the driving of the GFRP reinforcement members.
Over the next slide,
We'll be going over the ACI 4441R15 to calculate the share contribution of the GFRP steer apps, as well as calculate the share contribution of the equivalent volume of the steer apps capacity. Using the cross section as well as and the number for GFRP start up at the 6-inch on the center at the given material properties. We will first calculate the tensile strength of the GFRP start up at the beam, which in the first case is the limiting factor using the equation 6.2.1 of the ACA 440. Following the equation of the we will now need calculate the design in tensile strength based on the unstrained. This is at the limiting tensile strength that was mentioned in the previous slide. There's a potential to increase with the development of the more accurate models. Using the strength of 0.004, we were able to calculate the design tensile strength of 24 KSI. Now that we have the strain with the will not able to calculate the shear resistance provided by the GFRP steel apps. Using the equation at 2.c of the ACA 440, we're able to see that the shear resistance provided by the GFRP steel apps is 25.6 skips. Using the equation 22.510.53 of the ACI 13, we're able to calculate the shear contribution of the equivalent steel reinforcement and the 6 in the center. It's come out to 16.4 kips, which is significantly greater than that of the GFRP reinforcement. However, if we were able to go back to the previous slide, we would know that the GFRP steel app had a tensile strength of the 100 KSI, which was significantly reduced to 24 KSI to ensure the safe and conservative prediction of the strength as well as of the resistance of the GFRP steel apps, and to ensure that no catastrophic errors occur and with the development of the more equivalent models. There is a potential to decrease of the limiting strength, which will in the turn increase of the shear resistance provided by the GFRP steel apps. So, it will technically not be 25.6 kips, rather significantly greater. However, this can only be achieved with the research into this material. According to the deep research, it's possible to find the next conclusions. The GPR rebar has higher tensile strength and higher corrosion resistance than steel rebar, allowed with the more flexural strength. These properties make of the GFRP as a good alternative to steel in the applications in the constructions of the foundations. GFRP rebar achieved approximately 13 higher steel tensile steel than the steel bar. The composite steel of the reinforced concrete is at 25 megapascal. This value is acceptable according to the specification of the British stand against specification. And finally, it is possible to use design a traditional concrete shear equations in the GFRP elements. Finally, this is a one proposable alternative for increase the use of the material the alternative materials in the field of the construction because it's so important to change the traditional procediments and adaptation at the new wides of the development for the innovations for the new materials and addition more materials to the contribute with um, the populations around the construction and help at the decrease the costs and the traditional ways in the construction. And thank you so much for this time for this presentation. Continuously, I'm going to display the reference. Notice I present my reference. This reference is the use of the principal journals or the principal articles about the research in these materials. At the moment, I have 20 reference with the principal journals of the Q1 according to the requirement of the course. Finally, I thank you for the attention and the opportunity for explain about these alternative techniques for the construction in this technical brief. For me, it's so important to explain what is the difference between the traditional elements as a steel and incorporation with the new material as a GFRP materials. Thank you so much. See you.